Game changer, dry eye expert, tiny but makes a huge impact in eye care. Friends and family, I got the one and only Dr. Angelica Cifuentes. Let's go. This is a Defocus Media production.
Audio Jungle.
What's up, everyone? It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Darryl Glover.
And I'm Dr. Jennifer Lyerly, resident optometry nerd.
And welcome to Defocus Media, optometry's #1 podcast, where we discuss the hottest topics, latest technology, eyewear, practice management, and more. So sit back, relax, and defocus. What's up, everyone? It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Darryl Glover. Welcome to Defocus Media, the #1 optometry podcast in the entire world. Today, I'm super excited because we have a star in eye care. And this star, as I mentioned before, is known as Tiny Optometrist, but in my heart and in my eyes, she makes a huge impact because she has done so much, from being an advocate for the Hispanic population, from trying to save every patient out there from dry eyes, and to just really changing the way that we approach eye care. Friends and family, I'd like to welcome my colleague, Dr. Angelica. How are you doing today?
Hi, Daryl. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing super well. Thank you again for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm super excited, and I can't wait to just dive into your story. I created this series, My Journey in Eye Care, because I love to learn about people's journeys. I feel like the more we share our stories, the more people see themselves in you. But most importantly, when they see all those milestones that you've reached, all the things that you've done in the eye care, they know themselves that they can make it happen as well. So
Exactly.
super excited to peel back the layers. But before we get started, I gotta say, I was definitely starstruck when I saw you a couple weeks back when we had some training together. And I kind of feel like you were the same way, because I know you said, hey, you know
Yeah.
what? We got to represent on social media and take a picture. So super
Yeah. The
excited
second I saw
now.
you, I was like, oh my God, he's here. So I'm super happy to, number one, finally have met you in person, right? I feel like social media we get to know so many people virtually, but then
Yeah.
when you see each other in person, it's just that bond becomes that much stronger. And so it was a pleasure meeting you in person, and now we're doing this together.
100%. And it's crazy. I have a couple of business partners, Dr. Harbier Cyan,
Yes.
and Harbier and I were business partners for probably a year and a half, 2 years before we actually met each other. Right. But then we
Wow.
finally met up at a conference, and now we're like brothers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Another guy, Obi Malopi, over in South
Yes.
Africa, with business partners. We got a platform out there known as Africa Media, and we've never met, but we talk every week. Every Friday we have a one-on-one call, and we message each other all
I
throughout the
love it.
week. But it's just amazing what social media does. It brings you together, and when you actually see someone in person, you're kind of like, man, give me a hug, like, what's up?
Yeah,
I, like,
yeah. I was like, oh my God, it felt like I haven't seen you in such a long time when I truly was my first time meeting you.
right,
So it
right,
was
right.
great.
So super excited. I really want to jump into your story, but before we get too far off, I always like to introduce my guest to who's in front of me, who they're listening to, who they're watching, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. So if you don't mind, maybe sharing a little bit about your background, maybe even a fun fact, and then we can jump into the story of Tiny Optometrist.
Of course. So I'm Angelica Cifuentes, aka Tiny Optometrist. I was born in Colombia and raised in Miami. I came to the States actually when I was 12 years old. I have been married for a long time. Today, as a matter of fact, is my anniversary.
Oh, happy
Fun fact.
anniversary!
Thank you. Um, I speak Spanish. I'm bilingual, so I speak Spanish and English. I absolutely love my culture. I'm obsessed with optometry. I think everybody knows that. I love helping students from pre-optometry all the way to optometry school, and that's just a little sprinkle on top about me.
Nice, nice. And where'd you go to optometry school?
I went to optometry school at Nova Southeastern University, and I am the CEO and co-founder of By Dry Eyes.
Oh, very nice, very nice. So let's get into your story. Let's get into your journey, right? Because you really took a non-traditional approach, right? And again, I love to share these stories because yes, our colleagues are listening, but there's also some student out there that
Yeah.
was in the same position, the same place where
Mhm.
you're from, going through the same, struggles, wins, losses, whatever it may be. So I'd really like for me to kind of take it from the beginning and kind of get to where we're at now. So if you don't mind sharing your story, because I'm
Okay.
interested in learning a little bit more.
Yeah, so it all started in Colombia. Let's take you back to Colombia.
Let's go to
So
Colombia.
I come from, my dad used to own a restaurant business, and
Okay.
then my mom was a teacher. And so from a early age, I was always in the school system. Just be in the classroom, not knowing
Sure.
what's going on, but just be in the classroom. Turns out that my first week in first grade, I wanted to do everybody's homework, and so I finished. I wanted to play, so I did everyone's homework, and they noticed that, and they're like, "You can't do that." So they made me take a test, and I essentially skipped first grade and went straight to second grade, just because
Nice.
I don't know. And then I went through school regularly, but I was already advanced at that point. And so when I traveled to the States, I was 12 years old. And every single immigrant has to come through here to go to school. You have to take a test, an oral and a written test. And so to see kind of what level of knowledge you're landing at. And so when I was in the middle of eighth grade. That's when I traveled from Colombia to Miami.
Okay.
And my knowledge level was a 10th grade level, but I was in the middle of eighth grade. My English wasn't there. So they offered me the opportunity to go straight to 10th grade and just learn the language.
Okay.
um, my mom was being a teacher, super excited for me, and she wanted me to absolutely do it, but she forgot the fact that I was 12 years old. And so my dad, on the other hand, was like, let's just talk about this at home, let her process. It's a new culture, it's a new country, a new
Mhm.
language. And now you're putting this little girl, 12-year-old, into 10th grade. Let's just like process this. So
Yeah.
when I got home, he told me, it's up to you. We're not going to get mad at you. Whatever you want to do, you do. And so I thought about it. And in my mind, silly me, I really thought that the United States school system was like the movies Mean Girls. And
Oh
so I
my.
was terrified. I was like, oh my God, no. So I decided to stay in eighth grade and just learn the language. So what I would do is I would look at the clock, and every 45 minutes, so 45 minutes of the classroom, I would study English, and 15 minutes of the classroom, I would do the homework that everybody was supposed to do during that time. Right. So that's
Ah,
kind of how I did my schooling. And I really wanted to learn. You cannot do honor classes unless you have the language down. And I really
right.
wanted to be in honors. So I studied as much as I could. I actually got like a special test during summer, because you're not supposed to get out of the ESO language during summer. You're supposed to finish the year. And I took the test. They passed me. I was able to be with the regular people. That's what I call them. And I finished high school. In high school, in 10th grade, they also offered me to do the dual program. And I said, to go to college. And I really wanted to have that experience, that high school experience, being that I was already so young. Everybody was 3 years older than me.
Right.
I wanted to kind of stay and soak it in. And then I realized it was not like Mean Girls. So I decided to stay and just, enjoy high school. And I did. I did everything that is high school related, the good and the bad. I did it all. And I was
Yeah.
very happy that I was able to at least enjoy that, being that I was still the youngest. I graduated the youngest out of my entire high school. I was 16 years old. I had just turned 16 and we
Wow.
graduated. Yeah. And so, it was great. But with all of those highlights, it still comes the down parts, right?
Yeah.
Which it was a lot to handle, especially during senior year, because that's kind of when you start selecting your colleges and where you want to go. And I was a very, very good student. And so I had scholarships. Comes to find out that because of my immigration status at the time, I was not able to accept the scholarships
Oh no.
yeah, that was being offered to me. So imagine putting all that effort, having that great GPA, doing
Right.
everything right, and coming your last year of senior, because that's not something that I talked to my parents about. It's not something that we discussed, right? I knew that
Right.
we were going through legal proceedings, but I just didn't know exactly what it entailed.
Right.
And so it was when I got the scholarship offers and I got home super excited. I was like, oh my God, I qualify. And they had to kind of break it down to me like, we are so sorry, but you can't do this. And I was just like,
Wow.
so
It's like they pulled the rug from underneath your feet. I mean, and especially just thinking at that age,
Hmm.
like just the emotional roller coaster you might have been on, right?
Yeah, like
Um,
I kept looking at the other requirements. I used to play sports. I mean, you name it, I had it. My GPA was impeccable. My classes, my grades, I was advanced. I was taking honors. Like everything was perfect, right?
yeah,
And so I learned the harsh truth literally senior year. And so I said, okay, everything happens for a reason. God has a plan. That's
amen to
fine.
that. Yeah,
And so I was 16. My little sister was also just born. So I said, you know what, it's fine. Like I'll just stay a year out of school. Like I'm young, it's okay. And so I did. And then I enrolled into a local community college called Miami-Dade in here in Miami. But the tricky part about that was that because I still didn't have this proper status, my parents had to pay 3 times the amount of my tuition.
oh my goodness.
And so being, that's also another hardship. So I was like, oh my God, here we go. And so I made a deal with my dad and I told him, listen, I will work at the local mall and earn pennies, literally, as long as you pay for my tuition and I'll pay for my books. Because back then we didn't have the luxury of ebooks. It was your textbooks that are like 800 pounds, right? And
Yeah,
so that's kind of what we did. We made a deal, and if I was to ever get a bad grade, I had to pay him the amount of money that he invested into my schooling. So that's kind of what we did. So from very early on, I learned responsibility, and I learned that I had to work hard for whatever I wanted to accomplish in life. And I have always wanted to be someone, and kind of, I always had this dream of making my parents' sacrifices worth their time, right? So
yeah,
we did that. I finished my first 2 years, which ended up being like 2 years and a half because my parents couldn't afford the full semester. And so after that, I said, you know what, it's okay, let's take a break. And so I did, and it was during that time. It was actually towards the end of my first 2 years of undergrad, my community college, that my brother thought that his contact lens was like floating in the back of his eye because he fell asleep with them.
uh-oh, uh-oh.
And so I took him, and I was taking anatomy at the time. So I took him to an eye doctor nearby who turned out to be my mentor.
Okay.
And I saw how he went super concerned and walked out so happy that, for the most part, that there was no contact lens in the back of his eye, which I had told him, by the way. I told him that it was not anatomically possible, but he said that I didn't know anything and that we need to go to the doctor. So, of course. But it was a great experience to the point that I asked her if I could shadow her. And she said, absolutely, come Monday morning, 9 o'clock. Monday morning, 9 o'clock, I was there with my little notebook. Luckily, her office was so close to the community college that I would go back and forth between classes.
Nice.
And I ended up that week, I fell in love with optometry. I was completely obsessed with the profession.
Yeah,
And so I knew that this is exactly what I wanted to do, right? And
yeah,
so I shadowed her for like 2 years, but during that time, I was able to I started working in the eye care field. Like I think my first job was honestly made up. It was like by the office. The office saw me there so frequently that they made up a job for me. They literally said,
right,
"You be the
right.
technician," and I used to just read with the lensometer, the glasses, and like take an AR, and that was it. That was my job. I was so happy. I was like, of course, I'm doing optometry.
Yeah,
And I did that. And then I ended up I went to the mall, and then I asked if I could just work like a seasonal job at like one of those, we used to call it Optical World. And
yeah,
I learned a little bit about insurance, I learned a little bit about glasses. And then I worked at an office then as a front desk, and then I learned a little bit about the optical. So when the opticians were out to lunch or whatever, I'll fix glasses and like fit
yeah,
glasses. And then I ended up becoming a scribe. So like little by little, I started to build kind of all that experience,
yeah,
and but still with the goal of when the time was right, when I was gonna go back to school and
yeah.
do it. And so everything worked out. And one day I said, you know what? I need to go back to school. And this time I could. And so I went and I enrolled in Florida International University.
Okay.
And I remember that I had already been out of school for, I think it was close to 4 years. So I was
Wow.
cutting it close,
Yeah,
yeah, to register my classes that I had taken previously count towards my degree. and I asked if I could take 5 classes that semester. And they looked at me like I was crazy. They said no. They're like, no, if you want to, you need to talk to your advisor. So I did. I went and talked to my advisor, and they were like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. And I was like, yes, we are. So they're like, you need to talk to, I don't know if you know this, but I take no for an answer. So I was like, I'm super determined. So they're like, you need to get an override by your professor if you really want this to happen. I highly advise you not to do it. You haven't been in school in a long time. This is different. I needed all my sciences classes. So I was like, okay. I went, and they're like, don't do it. You also have a full-time job. And I was like, okay. So I went and got the override against everybody's advice.
Right.
It turns out that I made dean's list that semester. So I
Wow.
went back for more. I was like, here's my dean's list, here are my grades. I'm also maintaining a full-time job. Give me
Yeah.
more classes. And so that's kind of how I continued my schooling. And then I
Yeah.
finished my undergrad. And I had my regular gap year, as everybody has their gap year, to go through optometry school. By then, I already had so much experience. I think I had maybe like
Oh
6 years
yeah.
of experience in the field. I mean, I had
Yeah.
done it all. I had done it from lab to optician to front desk to managing to
Yeah.
scribe. So I was just like, okay, I'm ready to be the doctor. And
Yeah.
so I took my OT. I presented everything that I had to present. My number one dream school was Nova. Um, and I applied. I think it was like 5. I heard back from like 3 in Nova, nothing, and I was like, oh my god. By
Oh
the
man.
way, during that gap year, those gap years, because it was like 4, I
Right.
purchased a home in Miami, and so I wanted to stay in Miami. I
I'm
was like,
trying
I
to
need to
figure out
stay.
how you can stay sane with all the things you had cooking up. I mean, like you're just here, here, here. But the thing is, you're executing at a high level on every single thing, right? So, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm just blown away by just the
So
success and wins all throughout this entire journey.
I am a very determined person, and something that I have always kept in my mind is
Mhm.
all the sacrifice that my parents have put
Yeah.
into at everything that I am today. And I needed to, I always had that drive and that fire within me to
Yeah.
continue to be a better person, to continue to pursue my dreams and my goals. I'm also the oldest out of 3. So I wanted to be the example. I wanted to lead them so that they
Yeah.
can have a role model essentially to say, hey, you know what? Like, she could do it, I could do it too. Mind you, my parents didn't do any schooling here in the United States. So this was
Yeah.
all me figuring out by myself. I had
Yeah.
nobody to help me. Like,
Yeah.
this is how you do college. No, it was just
Yeah.
Google and me. And I was like, this is what I'm gonna do and figuring things out. But it was always that. It's always and that's a drive that it's always every single no that I got throughout my entire process because there were a
Yeah.
lot, right? And a lot of downs. I always told myself this is just an opportunity for my yes. I need to get the
Love
next
it.
no so that I can get my yes. And
Right.
eventually you'll get my yes. It wasn't one of those that somebody closes the door on me and I'm going to just automatically be defeated and say
Right.
and feel bad for myself and feel sorry for myself. I don't believe in that victim mentality at all.
Yeah.
I'm a go getter. I am very disciplined. And I said, you know what? This is my goals. And maybe right now it's not the time. Maybe God has better plans for me. I always left it as to this is not a no. This is
Yeah.
just, it's not the right time
It's
right
not
now.
the season. It's not the season
Yeah.
for it, right? But at
Yeah.
some point in time, it'll
At
come.
some point in time, it's going to work
Yeah.
out for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
And I'm
follow the
glad it did.
footsteps that's in front of you that God places in front of you, and before you know it, it'll happen, right? But it got to be the
Ex-
right seasons for you. Now, I want to kind
ex-
of pivot back. You were talking about your story. You applied to all these schools, didn't hear back from Nova. What cooked up from there?
So I booked an interview with, I think it was like ICO
Okay.
and in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I booked my flight. I had everything ready.
Yeah.
I was flying out Saturday. Prior
Okay.
to that Saturday, I think it was like Monday, I received an email from Nova
Okay.
saying, congratulations, we would like to grant you an interview.
Oh, nice.
I freaked out. I was driving and I was like shaking and driving, like, and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what's going on?
Yeah.
And so I made it to work and they sent me a secondary email saying you have to write like some sort of paragraph, like a secondary application.
Sure.
And so I told my boss, who was my mentor at the time, I was like, hey, like I got accepted by Nova, but I need to do this essay, but I also need to open the office. And she's like, pause. You're not opening anything but that email. You're gonna go into my office and you're gonna
Right?
write that paragraph, and you're not getting down to you write that paragraph. And I was like,
Yeah.
she knows that I'm not the best writer. It takes me a long time to kind of get warmed up and going. So
Sure.
she's like, you're not getting out of there until you get that done. And I was like, okay. So I got in and I did what I had to do. And Tuesday, they asked me to book my appointment, my
Yeah.
interview, and I said okay. The first available was like 2 3 weeks out, and I was like, that's fine. Like, I mean, I'll go to Chicago and
Yeah.
then let's see what happens.
I mean, could you
That was
sleep
a
at night? I bet every day you were just like, could this day get here? Because I mean, I know that was your dream
Of
school to
course, I
attend.
was like, "Do I really have to go to Chicago?" But it was fine. I was like, one step at a time, right? Then I didn't hear anything from Wednesday. Thursday, I get a call from a 954, which is the area code from Davie.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I'm like, hello. And I was just checking out a patient. It was so funny because I had the chart and I gave it to the front desk and I'm like shaking. And I was like, hold on. And I couldn't find like quiet spot. So I went into the patient's bathroom.
Oh my
And it
goodness.
had, those bathrooms that have that noise, the crrr
Yeah,
noise,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's where I got in. I was like, it's fine. So I picked up the phone. I was like, hi. And they're like, hey, we know that this is super short notice, but you booked your interview for like 3 weeks out. And we actually would like to know if you can come tomorrow.
Oh wow.
I'm like, so they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay, no problem. And
Yeah,
then I booked, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, let me me being me, I'm
yeah.
a very responsible person. So I said, let me call you back because I need to find out with my job. They're like, okay. So I got out of there. I knocked into the doctor's and I was like, hey, like, I need to know if I can do this. And she's like, are you serious? Are you serious? She's like, of course. I'm like, but I need off to. She goes, Angelica, go. And she goes, and as a matter of fact, get out of here. Go get your
Right.
nails done. Go get a suit. You probably don't even have anything ready. And I was like, so then
Yeah.
I left and I did all of that. I did the interview. Everything went great. I like this was like 2 weeks prior to Chicago. So I did everything. And then it was the week that I had to fly out to Chicago. And Nova takes roughly a week for you to hear back from them. So
Okay.
you do your interview and the following week on that Friday is when they call you. And
Okay.
so it was that Friday and the next day I will fly out. And so I'm there the whole day. My stomach was like here. I didn't want to eat. I was nauseous the whole day.
Oh
I was like,
wow.
anytime they're going to call me and say yes or no, this is life changing to me. And so they did call me and they said, do you have a moment and can you sit down? I was like, it's a no. Immediately it's a no. And I was like, oh my God, here comes another no. And they said, congratulations, yes,
Oh,
you're
fantastic.
accepted. But they asked me if I wanted to do the traditional program or if I wanted to do the non-traditional program. And their main concern was because number one, I was married, and they
Okay.
saw that I had always done school and worked simultaneously. So they were afraid that that was something I wanted to continue to do through optometry school, which, as you know, it's quite not possible.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah. So I told them,
Unless
I'm
you're
like,
doing work study, it's not happening.
yes. So I said, you know what? No, this is the one and only time that I'm not going to work and I'm just
Yeah.
going to dedicate to school. So I want to go the traditional route. And so
Oh,
they accepted me, and I promise you, I finished that phone call and I was just bawling and crying and
yeah.
crying. Just so much emotion, so much hard work. It took so many no's and so many it was like such a hard roller coaster for me to get to that
Yeah.
point that it to me was truly unbelievable.
Yeah.
And
No.
so yeah, I got in and I was super excited. I called ICO and I was like, thank you, but I'm not going in. I apologize. And they understood. I still went to Chicago and I took it as a trip to celebrate my acceptance to
Yeah,
Nova.
that's a great city to
Um,
celebrate in, so you can't
it
go
was
wrong.
great. It was great. And yeah, that's kind of how everything went. But
Yeah.
it was never easy. So whenever I get questions from like students like, oh, with XYZ reasons,
Yeah.
I always tell them like once if you have your heart set to something, You
Yeah,
will make it happen.
absolutely.
Trust it.
Yeah,
And I don't. I feel like I've never gone into so much detail with anyone really about like the whole story.
yeah,
And so, a lot of people see it as like, yes, I had a non-traditional, as you see, it was like a lot
yeah,
of gaps through my schooling. It was never a
absolutely.
smooth ride, but it was so worth it because every single experience that I had prior to that, I got something out of it, and I was able to apply into optometry school. And
Yeah,
I feel like it made me who I am and who I was during optometry school. So,
yeah,
it was 100% worth it. Every single sacrifice that I had to do, every single tear, desperation,
yeah.
everything was worth it.
Yeah. Well, hey,
Mhm.
fantastic story. And we're getting a lot of chatter in the crowd. Everyone's like super excited to hear your story. We even got Dr. Howard Purcell, the Dean of New England College of Optometry. Thank you for sharing your inspired story. Wow, Nova was lucky to have you. Wishing you the best from a fellow colleague from the 305, right? The 305 is definitely representing. Your story is incredible. And, throughout this story, I've heard a lot of key things that really resonated with me. Number one, the power of mentorship, right? You always got to surround yourself with a strong village, around yourself with people that have done what you're trying to do and with people that actually care about you. And clearly that was done with that doctor. Clearly that was done with your family. Clearly that was done with your husband as well, right? Because you got to
Mhm.
have that strong
Oh
support
yeah.
cast that surrounds you. The thing that I really love is just the determination. You know, optometry is hard. School is hard. It's difficult coming to a new country and adapting to the culture and trying to see where you fit in and how to maneuver and navigate through this landscape. And clearly, you have done a fantastic job with that. Now, the thing that I really want to expand on is you mentioned telling students your story and breaking it down to them, and I think you've done a lot of that through the power of social media. So I'd love for you to maybe share a little bit of why you chose to use social media to really share your story, right?
Mhm.
Because I personally think social media is a very impactful platform if you use
Mhm.
it the right way. So maybe if you can kind of just cook up, why you went that direction, and then I want to pull a little bit from you in regards to maybe what's the best platform and some other things, because there are some ODs out there that are struggling with, should I get on social media? Should I not? Should I stay traditional? Should I get digital? But kind of cook up what's been going on, what went through your head whenever you decided to jump into the world of social media.
Yeah. So my when I started optometry school, I really wanted to have an Instagram profile for optometry. But to my surprise, first year for me was quite literal hell. I If we're being honest here, I cried like every day for 45 minutes while I was driving from Davie to Miami because I was
Okay.
so stressed out.
Yeah.
And it was just so, I was so overwhelmed. And multiple times, I can't count them. How many times I really thought to myself, I don't think I'm cut out for this.
Mm.
I'm like, I'm going to fail. And I was like, mind you, I have always been a really good student. So
High
for me
level.
to for me to come to first year, which was chaos for me,
Yeah.
learning very differently, every class is so different, it's so much information at once that those 45 minutes that I had to drive from Davie to Miami because I was
Yeah.
still commuting. I commuted my entire time to school. I would just cry and cry. And so I never really, I think maybe first year I posted two pictures, if anything. And so during first year, I was blessed and lucky to have met my best friend, Melissa,
Sure.
Dr. Gray.
Shout out to
And
Dr. Melissa Gray, and congratulations on getting married. And also saw another surprise on social
yeah,
media
I'm a
today.
tia now. Yeah, she's pregnant. I'm so excited. I literally have been waiting. I kept asking, like, when are you announcing? Because I just can't hold it anymore. So I'm glad that she did today because I am super
Yeah.
happy. But I met her and she was such an important person for me to learn how to navigate optometry school. She was there through my ups, through my downs. It was her, it was another best friend of mine called Marilyn and Tash, amongst other, but those were like the most pivotal.
Yeah.
people during my optometry school. And so we used to kind of like learn, and she used to quiz me because the best way for me to learn is for you to quiz me. And
Okay.
so one day we were studying for an exam, one night actually, and she was talking to me and she said, "Hey, um, have you thought of doing social media for real?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "You're very stressed out." She goes, "How about we do social media on the side?" And I said, "Okay, Melissa, yeah." She's like, "I think your name is horrible." And I was like, "Thank you." My name at the time was like Dr. Angelica Cifuentes, swear I don't even know. And she's like, "It's horrible." And I'm like, "Thank you." She's like, "How about you name yourself Tiny Optometrist?" And I was like, "Okay." And she's like, she had it reserved for herself, but she's like, "You're embody the name." She's like, "You're so small. You need to be Tiny Optometrist." And I was like, "Okay, let's go back to studying and we'll talk about it." Next
Right.
morning, I'm cooking up my eggs before going to school, and I was just like, "Tiny Optometrist." And I'm like, "I'm gonna do it." And so I wrote to her, I was like, "Let's do it." And she's like, "Maybe it'll be like a good thing for us." And I was like, "Melissa, if I fail because I'm doing social media," she's like, "You're not." I'm like, "Okay." She goes, "Plus we're doing it together. It's fun." I'm like, "Okay." So we did. And
Right.
then we'll create content here and there. And to my surprise, it turned out to be kind of like my getaway from all that stress that I was
Nice.
having in school.
Very
Doing
nice.
those little videos and little posts, it was more like releasing my stress, and I kept sharing my story and kind of like my day to day as a student, and like
Yeah.
the good, the bad, the sour, the tears, the happiness, like everything, my sleepless nights, like everything was just kind of like broadcasted, and like what we learned, because I originally felt like not a lot of people understood what it entails to be an optometrist. Even myself, when I thought I knew a lot before going into optometry school,
Right.
but when I started and actually started studying, I was like,
Oh yeah.
nobody knows what this
Yeah.
is.
And that first year and going into that second year, to your point, is hell, right? I mean,
Yep.
I remember you saying earlier, you cried 45 minutes from one spot to another. There were a lot of nights that I was like, damn, I don't know if
Yeah.
I could do this, right? But
Yeah.
again, I
Yeah.
had that strong village, I had faith. I
Hmm.
remember there was a time I called my mom and I'm like, I'm coming home. And then my girlfriend at the time, now my wife,
Yeah.
I called her and I was like, baby, I can't do this. I'm coming home. I'm packing all my stuff and I'm coming
I'm
back to North
leaving.
Carolina. And she said, did they kick you out? I said, no. Did you fail? No. And what you coming home for? I was
Yeah.
like, well, damn, you're right. So I got back
Yeah.
into the mix and made it happen.
Yeah.
But this is good. So Dr. Gray gave you the
Hmm.
name Tiny Optometrist, as I mentioned earlier,
Hmm.
tiny but major, large impact, huge impact, right? And I don't think you're that tiny because when I saw you in person, I told you, I said you're not that tiny,
I was wearing
right?
heels,
Oh, okay. I'll give you that. I'll
like
give you
5 inch heels.
that.
I'm 5 feet tall on a good day.
Okay, all right, I'll give you that. But so you guys started cooking up that social media content. It was a
Yeah.
stress reliever. When you graduated from school, it seemed like you took it to the next level. So let's kind of talk about where that went because that's where I started to see you a little bit more in regards
Mhm.
to some of the content that you were really putting out there that I personally thought was effective and impactful.
Thankfully. So what happened was I graduated and I actually found myself in a spot where I didn't know where to take my social media. I was like, okay, I've grown this audience.
Yeah,
I think I graduated maybe 4 to 5K. And I was like, okay, I've grown this audience. It's been always about optometry school. Now
yeah,
what? And I'm like, what am I gonna do? I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't even know how to be a doctor. So I was just like, oh my God. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna continue to do what I've been doing. I'm gonna
yeah,
continue to share, what is it like to be licensed and what are the things I need to do and credentialing. And when I was going through all of that, I shared that
yeah,
as well. And then when I became a doctor and I was practicing, I was like, what are the most common questions that I get asked? Or like the whole recall recently. So
yeah,
anything that comes to mind and that I feel like is important and people should know and be aware about, then I just post up. And I've always used it as a getaway. I never use it really as like I have to have a strategy and like
Yeah.
think of this. I honestly really don't. I just speak from the heart and record when I really feel like I have to record when I'm in a good mood and I'm
Yeah.
feeling it. Not
Yeah.
like, oh, I have to do this because today's Tuesday.
Yeah.
No, I do it because I want to, because I want to share that moment with everyone. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of when I started getting more into it. And then a lot of people started to ask me questions. And, a lot of optometry students were like, can I shadow you? And I was like, oh my God, you're going to give me the honor to be a mentor? Absolutely. And so I started having students come, and like even optometry students will be like, can you teach me XYZ? So I'll create a video of like how to do your best 90D and like, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and it took off from there. And honestly, I am so happy that that night Melissa decided to tell me to let's take social media for
Yeah.
real, because it opened up so many opportunities for me. I feel like my career has completely skyrocketed because of social media. I've
Yeah.
made a name of myself, and the feedback that I've gotten is so positive. This
Absolutely.
community that we've built is just truly very supportive, genuine, and I feel like we all look out for each other. And so I love that. I love what I've created. I love where it's taken me. I feel like had I not gone on social media, I probably would not have had the opportunities that has been presented to me. And so I'm so glad that I did
Yeah.
it and that it resonated with people, because I could do it. And if I'm not genuine and if I'm not who I am, because people have to accept you for who you are. I'm not
Absolutely.
one to be someone different on camera than off camera. I am who
Yeah.
I am, on or off. And this is Tiny Optometrist,
I
Angelica
I
Cifuentes, all
love
the way
that.
in.
And I
Mhm.
love that you said that. I love that you said a couple of things. Number one, just being authentic, that's what attracts people, right? I don't know how folks can spend so much time being someone that they're not, because that seems like a hard ass job, to be honest, right? For me, when it comes to social media, I got a decent following, pulling a lot of patients, connect with a lot of, industry colleagues and things of that nature. And I'm like you, I post content when I want, right? I
Mhm.
may post a picture and I look crazy as hell. My wife is always like, "Why'd you post that picture? Your belly's out. You look like you're pregnant." You know what I'm saying? Little things like that. But do I care? No, I'm married. I already got a
No.
wife, and also I just wanted to post a picture. I thought I
Yeah.
looked fly and fresh, right?
Yeah.
But I think being authentic is the best way to put content out, because it does truly resonate with people a little bit more, right? And then also I wanted to, give you a thank you and give you a shout out for being very vocal during the time when Florida, and I know they're going through it again, was having issues with being called a doctor, right?
Yes.
That's the power of social media. You can
Mhm.
connect with patients, you can connect with colleagues, you can connect with legislators, you can
Mhm.
make an impact through the voice
Yes.
that you have that can spread to thousands and millions of people. So if you leverage it the right way, it can
Mhm.
really change the game for you. Now,
Yep.
Angelica, I want to just spend a couple minutes on, for doctors out there that are looking at using social media as a platform, and they're a little lost in the sauce and confused. What platforms do you think is the best platforms out there for them to amplify their voice or connect with, colleagues or patients?
So I feel like everybody has their own kind of favorite platform, but
Yeah.
what I've found is that nowadays I will go on Instagram actually to search a restaurant that I want to go to. I want to see the
Mhm.
pictures, what's the vibe, like
Yeah.
so Instagram and has become that kind of Google, same thing
Yeah.
as kind of TikTok. It's
Yep.
become, that how to do XYZ.
Yeah.
So I'm biased into saying Instagram. I really enjoy Instagram a lot. So I would say Instagram just because it's a good starting point to get
Yeah.
you to that level. And then after that, you can always expand to TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. Facebook, I don't use it as much really. LinkedIn, I actually surprisingly just started using it maybe like a month and a half ago or two,
Yeah.
if anything. So I'm not well versed in the LinkedIn environment, but I feel like a good starting, easy to go app would be Instagram.
Yeah, I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, I leverage Instagram more doctor to patient, although a lot of my colleagues follow me on it.
Yeah.
But being that I leverage it for more doctor to patient interaction, I pull a lot of patients in. And the thing that I love
Mhm.
is that when a patient comes in, I've already created trust with them, because they've seen either my kids or they've seen that I've traveled somewhere or there's a food or a restaurant that we have in common. So it's an
Mhm.
easier interaction. It's an easier way to prescribe from the chair because they're listening and locked and
Yeah.
loaded because they already feel like I'm their best friend, right?
Yeah. I've
For
gotten that
me,
too.
yeah, right. And for me, when it comes to business or doctor to doctor, I love LinkedIn. That's like my playground, right?
Yeah.
So I live on that. TikTok, I'm just getting into. I don't know a lot on TikTok. There's so many different things to
It's
look
a
at.
it's a harsh crowd. It's a harsh
You,
crowd.
you know, it's just it's a lot. But the cool thing is, to your point earlier, TikTok, Instagram, these are search engines, right?
Yes.
People use these platforms to look up things and they look at those influencers as the ones that have the answers. So if you're not
Yeah.
on these platforms, I do encourage you to get on it. But to your point, stay authentic, post when
Hmm.
you want. But at the same time, there has to be some consistency so people know when to
Hmm.
look you up and expect your content for the most part. But I love it. I love it. The power of social media has also helped you to create a business.
Yes.
And I love for you to really talk about that transition of social media to your business. So if you don't mind, maybe just sharing a little bit about is it Buy Dry Eyes?
Yes. By dry
Yeah.
eyes.
So
Yes.
let's talk about that if you don't
So
mind.
of course, I would when I graduated optometry school, I really
Yeah.
loved what Dr. Carly Rose was doing with dry eye,
Oh
and
yeah.
her office is literally beautiful from what I see on social media again. And so I remember I was like, "Ugh, I wish I could do that,
Yeah.
but I'm a brand new graduate." So I was just like, okay, I'm like one day, and I'll just continue to kind of learn the space. And, there was no dry eye class when I was in optometry school. That happened sadly right after I graduated. They
Yeah.
implemented a dry eye clinic, but, um, it was something that I really wanted to do. And so my husband is a very business minded person. And one day he said, I have a business proposal. And I was like, okay. He's like, let's talk about it at home. I was like, all right. We talked about it. And he's like, I'm thinking with your passion of dry eye and my knowledge of business, let's create a business in the dry eye space. And I said, okay, what are we thinking? So we discussed. And then I remember he kept throwing names at me. And I was like, nothing clicked. Nothing clicked. I hated all of them. He's like, you're not giving me
You should have
anything.
went back to Melissa Gray to
I
help you
know.
out on that one.
Well, turns out one night it was like midnight and I was ready to go. I go to sleep really late.
Okay.
And I was ready to go to sleep. And I turned around to him and I'm like, bye, dry eyes. And I went to sleep.
Mm.
The next morning, he's like, we have the domain, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, he's
Oh,
like, it's amazing.
nice.
It's brilliant. And I was like, oh my God, I came up with a name. I couldn't come up with my own. I came up with my business name. Yeah. And so we started that business. It took up a lot of behind the scenes work to get it going. And
Yeah,
so that this was since essentially when I graduated. And January 2023, we launched By Dry Eyes, an e-commerce website for all dry eye products that patients might need. I feel like there's a lot of brands out there that you can't get on your regular Walmart, CVS, that are good quality. So I wanted to be able to have a reliable website where you are able to find all of those products that we all love and recommend to patients in one space. And so we did that. And I also wanted to have affiliates so that my fellow colleagues are able to refer their patients to my website, but also
nice.
be able to kind of have like a discount code for them and have their own benefits as well. And so we created a program around that as well. And it's been great. It's been a learning experience, but I am so happy with everything that we've accomplished. And it was more like, okay, this is tiny optometrist, but not have by dry eyes. And so I took it back to social media, and I originally was going to blend both together, and I said no, this needs its own identity because I am tiny optometrist. By dry needs to be by dry eyes, right? And
Right.
so I launched By Dry Eyes Instagram, and I started creating videos, and it was such a different way to create videos because it was more like UCG kind of content and like
Yeah,
more of showing products. It wasn't me talking, it was like different. It
right.
was very different. So it kind of opened up this different window for me to
Yeah.
learn about this
It's a
space.
learning curve to
Um,
it. It's a little different
yeah,
from just expressing your feelings, what's going on. This is now a
a
business,
business.
right? This is
Yeah.
now a brand, which Tiny Optometrist is a major
Yeah.
brand, but it sells itself. Now you
Yes.
got to put some thought behind it, some strategy behind it. And that's a
Yeah.
little different from personal
Very
branding, although
different.
you can leverage that personal brand into that business, you know?
Yeah, which has worked out. Patients follow me. I have colleagues follow me. I have so much. I have a wide
Yeah,
variety of patients, of people
absolutely.
who follow me on Instagram, and so they have been able to, like, when I launched Buy Dry Eyes. I think it was my first or second customer was actually a patient of mine who followed me on Instagram,
See?
and so I
Love
was
it.
like, "That's amazing," and getting those first orders to me was like a dream, because I'm like, "Oh my God, this is really happening!" Like,
Yeah.
how crazy. And
How
so
was that feeling for the first order? Like, where were you at? What were you feeling?
I,
Kinda like paint that picture if you don't
I
mind.
was in my kitchen cooking, and my husband came down. We have a story house, and he came down. He's like, "We got a sale," and I was like, "Stop! Oh my God!" It was like we won something. And
Yeah,
he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh my God!" And I was like, "I'm so excited!" Like, and it was always like the same way. Like, whenever we reached, like, we had like little goals, like
yeah,
5 orders, 10 orders, like a
yeah,
day. Oh my God! It's like high five, and like,
yeah,
it's that. And it's beautiful because normally they tell you not to mix business with pleasure. So being in a business, with your
with your
partner.
significant other, yeah.
Yeah, but we have been together for such a long time,
Yeah,
and he's like my best friend. He's really my building block of who I am.
yeah,
And so I was just like, it's fine, and it's been fine. It's been, there's rough days, there's
yeah,
good days, there's days that I have to stay really late. So I'll go to work your regular 9 to 5, come home, cook a meal, and then go and do boxes, and like
yeah,
think of strategies, and like look over emails, and do that
yeah,
until like really late at night. But had it not been for actually having him backing this up and like helping
yeah.
me through the process, there would just be no way that I could have been able to do this
I
by
love it.
myself.
I love it. Again,
So
that
I
that
am
strong
so
support
grateful.
cast, yeah, that
Oh, I'm
system, it
so
just makes
grateful
a
for him,
difference.
because he's really done a lot to be able to
Yeah.
make this happen.
Well, I don't wanna hold you too much longer because I know it's your anniversary. I feel special that you're celebrating some with me, so make sure after this podcast, you guys have a hell of a time, right?
Thank
But,
you.
I gotta touch on one last topic
Yeah.
before we let you go. Being Hispanic in eye care. You gotta tell me a little bit about, what you've experienced, what hurdles, how it's helped become a superpower of some sort. I would love to just learn a little bit about your journey through eye care, um, being from Colombia.
Yeah, of course. So, like I mentioned before, it was always a little hard when it came to kind of those immigration and stuff like that. That was probably
Yeah.
the gray area of it all. But the most beautiful thing about it is, one, believe it or not, I have always been very afraid of my accent. And
Okay.
which was one of the reasons why I didn't want to do like video and stuff. But one day I said, you know what? I am who I am. I am super proud of being Latina. My first language is Spanish, and I learned English, and you know what? This is who I am, and I accept
Yeah.
myself 100%. And so I started just doing videos, and it worked out just perfectly fine. It was a tremendous positive impact during optometry school, because I got to take care of Hispanic patients, being bilingual, and also helping translate my to my colleagues, to my classmates at the time, when they'll
Yeah.
have a Spanish patient, they'll call me in, and I'll just do it. So I'll get not only helping my fellow Hispanics by translating, but I'll also see a double case, because I finished my patient, but also was able to kind of look into the other one. So
Ah.
double the knowledge. It was great.
You're always doubling it up, always.
Always, always. You always have to find more. And so
That's how you
then
go from tiny to making that huge impact, right? You double, you stack yourself.
exactly. And then now, even in practice,
Yeah.
my patients are, I'll say, 50-50 Spanish,
Okay.
and like Spanish and English. So I can go in a day back and forth between Spanish and English. Sometimes I have like a child who speaks English, but the parents speak Spanish. I'm in the same room, and
Right.
I'm talking to both of them
Yeah.
simultaneously, one in English, one in Spanish, one in English, one in Spanish, back and forth. And
Yeah.
so, I'm very proud and happy that I've been able to do that. being Hispanic. I've also done a couple of lives with other optometrists from fellow countries. I'm actually in the works with someone
Nice.
that I'm going to be kind of teaching them about social media from optometrists in Guatemala. So
Nice.
it's definitely has opened up again, but it's always the power of social media. So
Yeah.
being Hispanic and the power of social media has always has opened up many doors for me, and I'm
Yeah.
very, very happy and grateful that I am who I am, and that I didn't let that language barrier stop me from pursuing what I wanted to pursue.
I love it. I love it. This has been a hell of a show. I've learned so much. Your determination, the power of social media, the importance of keeping a strong support cast, having that village around you, not taking no for an answer, right?
Yes.
I've learned so much about you, but I really want to end the show on, what is it that you want to be known for? When it's your turn or your time to retire that phoropter, you're done flipping those dials, you're done saving those dry eyes. What do you want to be known for, Angelica? Because you've done so much already and you're very young in your career, but what do you want the world to know you for when it's all said and done?
I want the people to know me for being a change and for leading as an example of determination. I want every Hispanic person or even anybody who is an immigrant and has big dreams not to ever feel like they cannot accomplish them, because that's just a barrier that you're putting yourself in your mind. It's not real. You need to just continue to knock on those doors, continue to get your no's, because one day you will get your yes. And so I would like to be that example to someone who feels like they can't do it, that they can. And it can happen at any age, at any time. Just continue to pursue your dreams and they will come true.
I love it. And at the top of the show, the first word that I said was game changer, right? First couple of words. And that's exactly what you are. And that's exactly what you have done. And I'm super excited to continue to watch your career. And for anyone out there that may want to partner with you or learn from you or have you as a consultant for anything that they may have been going on, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
You can reach me on social media, Tiny Optometrist, and I have a link on my email, so you can just press that email button and you'll get right in contact with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you tuning in and hanging out with me this evening. Everyone listening, make sure you go follow Tiny Optometrist if you're not. She has it going on with the social media, with the dry eyes, and she's speaking for companies out here now, right? She's really changing the game.
Yes.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us. We know it's your anniversary. Go out there and you guys do something fun and exciting. No business tonight. This is it. But for everyone following, make sure you continue to support Defocus Media. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn. Defocus Media is the handle. Thank you so much for tuning in today. It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Darryl Glover. Stay healthy, stay positive, stay blessed. And until next time, peace. Hey, family, if you enjoyed this full podcast, don't miss out on more engaging content. Check out the next episode right here. And for the latest updates, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Your support means the world to us. Catch us in the next episode. Peace.